Okay, good morning. Welcome to the House Revenue Committee meeting. And before we get started, please take the roll. Thank you, Ms. Jeffrey.
Good morning. Representative Bear,
Here.
Representative Byron,
Here.
Representative Locke, Representative Northrup,
Here.
Representative Oakley,
Here.
Representative Storer,
Here.
Representative Strock,
Here.
Representative Zwanitzer,
Here.
Chairman Harshman.
Here. Okay, thank you very much. And so we've got, I would describe two little bills that are important, though. It's important in our kind of cash flow and money. And I see Mr. Sackett from the Treasurer's Office is here, and so he'll be a help on these. First two will be much like those five we passed last committee. They'll be short little bills, and then we'll get into the meat of a couple really important property tax relief bills. Okay, so the first bill up for our consideration is House Bill 208, School Foundation Program Reserve Account Investments. Mr. Sackett, if you'd come on up, just as members have questions. Mr. Sackett's a Sundance Bulldog. We got a lot of Bulldogs running the state around here. I tell you, you got the Lovell Bulldog and Don Richards. You got the state budget chairman. He's a Sundance Bulldog, isn't he?
He is.
And yourself.
And
Okay,
for new members of the committee, he used to work for LSO.
longtime LSO employee, Ms. Second, budget fiscal.
Miss you guys every day. Not
Yeah.
as much right now.
Okay, so really just, members, if you flip over to page 2, this is the School Foundation Program Reserve Account, which is a legislative created account. It's kind of a, what I call a dead end account. Nothing flows in and nothing flows out. I call it the SFRA. But basically you want to talk about it, or some people could call it the education side LISRA. You know, it's a holding account if we get some extra money. So go ahead, just what does this bill do real quickly? Any monies that happen to come into that account?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. As I said, Matt Syke with the State Treasurer's Office. This bill, as the good chairman said, really just allows this account to be invested in equities. Currently, Don Richards said there's about 50 million in the account. There is a part-time dedicated flow to the account from severance taxes, which is 40% of the amount over the second cap for the next 2 years.
If we reach the second cap.
If we reach the second cap. Right now, it's estimated about 110 million,
Yeah.
which would put, in a couple of years, maybe the balance up to around 160 million. If there are not expenditures, as the chairman said, there's no dedicated spending policy to this, but it also means that the legislature could spend money out of this account at any time. So, which comes to the kind of question, this bill on the second page, a lot of language, but it basically just says that we may invest it in equities if we so choose.
Very good. So instead of earning 1%, we could possibly earn a greater return on the state's money.
The decision for us, Mr. Chairman, would be the potential of money being spent out of it, which then becomes a balance between maximizing return versus liquidity of accessing that money. If the legislature was to spend 160 million and sweep it to the SFP or school CapCon or something, we would have to take that money out of maybe more illiquid investments, which could be problematic. If we did have a little leeway or advance notice that this might be happening, then we could work on that. But so this does just allow us to invest in equities.
Any questions for the Treasurer's Office and Representative Chairman Northrup?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to ask, historically speaking, how much money has been spent out of this account? Is it commonly used, or is it more of just a holding account?
Go ahead, Mr.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Northrup. Generally speaking, no, I don't think much has been spent out of this. It's a relatively new account. It hasn't really had any dedicated money until this newest transfer over the second cap. So it's not had the lifetime of like the LSRA or something. So no, I would say generally there has not been many appropriations. I think there's a small appropriation now for the school CapCon account with coming out of that based upon the goldenrod, which mine is actually green, not gold, but So I say generally, no, there's not been a lot of expenditures out of it.
Thank you.
Questions? Okay, is there anything in this bill is problematic for the treasurer's office? I mean, is this bill do you any problems or is this okay?
No, Mr. Chairman,
Give you
it's
another
fine.
tool in the toolbox or an option?
It allows us to, but it does not mandate that we shall. So that kind of leaves the decision up to the treasurer's office.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Sack? Okay, appreciate your, and then I think you'll stick around for the next one. It's an important little bill as well. Okay, I'll open up public comment. Anybody here would like to comment on this little bill? Okay, anybody online? Okay, seeing none, we'll close public comment. Members, what's your pleasure? Is the bill? It's been moved by Representative Northrop. Second by Vice Chair Oakley. Okay, House Bill 208 is before us. Any amendments to the bill? It's pretty much all on page 2. Okay, seeing no amendments, and sensing you're ready to vote, please, the question being called. We do have a question. Go ahead, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I don't know if there's anybody here that can explain this. This registered under the Investment Advisors Act of 1940, is that common language that we have in these kind of things?
Yeah, go, that's good. Ms. Sackett, go ahead and explain. That's good for our.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Bear, it basically ties into us being a fiduciary and taking, our investments, following the investment prudent investor rules and those types of things. So it's standard language, which is within a number of the different investment account language.
Very good, and you might as well just stay there because this next bill is going to be up shortly. So, Ms. Jeffrey, please call the roll.
Representative Bear,
Aye.
Representative Byron,
Aye.
Representative Locke. Aye. Representative Northrop,
Aye.
Representative Oakley,
Aye.
Representative Storer,
Aye.
Representative Strock,
Aye.
Representative Zwanitzer,
Aye.
Chairman Harshman.
Aye.
The vote is 9 ayes, 0 noes.
Okay, who wants to carry this, that little bill? I guess we can maybe turn it over to a appropriator as well. That's a House Appropriations Committee bill. Okay, the next bill for our consideration is House Bill 209, Hathaway Scholarship Account Transfer Timing. Members, if you flip over to page 2, and I'll just give it a quick overview, and then turn over to Mr. Sackett. It's an issue we've talked about a lot, Mr. Sackett and I, and it's really about timing. And you see on July 1st, everything in the expenditure account. We don't have a data book in front of us, but if you had the expenditure account here as an account, and then on July 1st, it empties out in the reserve account. So there's 0 in the expenditure account. And then guess what happens in August? Got to start paying scholarships out, and there's no money in the expenditure account. So it's in the reserve account now, and it flows backwards to the expenditure account, it drains down the reserve account, we spend it, then the monies start coming in about October, right? When investment money is all accounted for and done and all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed, it's about October when the money comes in, but 3/4 of the scholarships are already paid out in August, September. So it drains the reserve account, makes it look like there's a problem with the Hathaway. The Hathaway started at 405, it's now over 700 million. So it's doing a nice job, and that's just on investment return growth. So this bill moves that tip from the end of the fiscal year on July 1st to October 15th. And that was our working cap then. Mr. Sackett, you want to add to that? And that's my go ahead.
Matt Sagler, State Treasurer's Office again. The chairman is exactly right. This just delays the transfer, so we're not taking the money from our left pocket, putting it in our right pocket, and then putting it back in our left pocket so we can make the expenditure. As the chairman said, the revenues start coming in October, and then through the rest of the year. This just cleans up and makes it a little simpler for our accounting team.
Do you think, Mr. Sackett, is this bill, I think it'd be helpful for your accounting back office of your crew.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, the treasurer and the office is supportive of this. It simplifies it, makes it easier, and prevents some unneeded transfers that are not necessary.
Okay, any questions, Mr. Sackett? Questions, committee? Okay, okay, I think no questions. Anybody here would like to testify on this? Another little bill that does a little fix, cleanup. Okay, these bills don't usually make the paper or the Facebook or the YouTube. But these are good little bills that help us run state government more efficiently and do a better job with our taxpayer money. Okay, so any public comment? Nobody online? Public comment? Okay, so we'll close public comment. Members, what's your pleasure on House Bill 209? Been moved by Vice Chair Oakley, seconded by Representative Northrup. Members, any questions, any amendments? Okay, sensing you're ready to vote, please call the roll on House Bill 209.
Representative Bear,
Aye.
Representative Byron,
Aye.
Representative Locke, Representative Northrup,
Aye.
Representative Oakley,
Aye.
Representative Storer,
Aye.
Representative Strock,
Aye.
Representative Zwanitzer,
Aye.
Chairman Harshman.
Aye.
The vote, 9 ayes, 0 noes. Do pass.
Okay, any volunteers on that little bill to carry?
I certainly will. if
Okay.
Anybody wants to. No?
Back up.
Okay, Representative Oakley can
We'll take your call.
take that bill, so you'll be watching for that one. Okay. The next bill for our consideration and these are a couple of the committee bill. This is a committee bill, and then the next is an individual bill. This is a joint revenue interim committee bill, House Bill 99.
No,
I don't know if anybody's here. I mean, I can explain it, but does anybody want to explain it? Anybody want to take us through it? Director Henson, when you come to a meeting, well, you administer it, so I thought you'd be, and you've done such a great job administering this program, and maybe just talk about, you were in all of our interim meetings, and then I can quit talking, because I've talked the last two bills, and you're actually administer it. And then, yeah, we made these amendments to the qualifications, and yeah, so we'd like to hear some more. So members, we've got this House Bill 99. It has our state program, but it also has a county program, optional program in this bill, and has qualifications. So why don't you take us through it and your thoughts as you go through, Director Henson?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Brenda Henson, Director of the Department of Revenue, and with me today, I have Christy Urich. She is the administrator of the Administrative Services Division, and her division is responsible for this program, sending out applications, sending out the refund checks. So certainly a valuable resource. I believe she's been administering this program since 2003. Obviously, some years it's funded, some years it's not. But what I'd like to do, I know not everyone on the committee was available or present during the interim discussions. So I thought it would be beneficial if we just started with the current program and how it exists in law and provide the committee members. We've got some handouts. We brought along the 2021 application, the pamphlet that goes along with those applications, and we'd like to distribute those if that's appropriate. The other thing we've got is the historical comparison of the refunds that were granted in 2019 versus the refunds we granted in 2021. That report is also in that packet. So the program itself historically has never issued refunds in excess of $1 million in a tax year until this year. This year, you'll see on the report that we've provided that this year we provided over 1.8 million in refunds to taxpayers in the 23 counties. This report that you'll be provided breaks it down per county as to how many applications we received, how many applications qualified, and what the average refund is per county. The other thing that the pamphlet and will provide you with is what that criteria is. You'll see in the current language that there are some qualifications for the program. The first being the income criteria. The household income cannot exceed currently 3/4 of the median household income for that particular county where the property is located. The second criteria is that the taxpayer cannot have assets exceeding 133,000 approximately is what the amount was for 2021. That is factored each year for inflation. But the current law started at 100 and through the years we've gotten up to 133. And that's assets other than the home that you're requesting the refund of property tax, one vehicle per adult member of the household, and also any assets that you may have, savings accounts, other property that you may own cannot exceed that 133. Now to what it is you can receive. Now you can receive under current law would be 1/2. A maximum, I had a moment. Okay, all right. And I apologize, Mr. Chairman, for not providing the information in a timelier fashion. Certainly. So the maximum refund is 1/2 of the. Okay. Okay. Yes, absolutely.
So members, this is on page 4 of your bill. So, the director talked, actually, I'm gonna back you up to page 3 on line 18. Director said where 3/4 of this county average income, right?
Correct.
Before you see the page there, and then the asset part on page 4, line 4, which was $100,000 over that, and then you were just talking now, based on page 4, line 12, 90%. The refund granted used to be half, couldn't be half, or that's what we're proposing to, but go ahead. So you're right there, remember? So
Thank
that's
you,
what-
Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate the focus on the language in the bill. Yes, so right now, and in 2021, the numbers that you have in front of you was based on the current language of 1/2 of the applicant's prior year property tax not to exceed the median resident, 1/2 of the median residential property tax bill for that county. So you can see within the pamphlet and within the documentation that you have, that there are substantial differences in what those numbers are, depending on which county your property is located in. Okay. Appropriation-wise, the legislature appropriated $3 million for this program.
Quick, do you have the bill in front of you?
I do.
And maybe we'll just keep rolling with this. So you finished the qualifications for the state program, but then on page 4, line 19, what happens?
Mr. Chairman, last year, the Senate enrolled Act 26 created a county option property tax refund program. The discussion at the time was what happens when you have the statewide program does not have funding, that the legislature is not funding that program. Would it be possible for the counties individually to have the option of funding the program on their own, with their own resources? And that bill passed. It mirrors the statewide program, and you'll see that there are the amendments that are proposed for the statewide program are also proposed for the county option. Now, at that time, I don't believe that there was a thought process that both programs might be funded during the same time. And during the interim discussions, the committee asked if the Department of Revenue and county treasurers would work together to perhaps provide some amendment language, and I will discuss that also, but to offset the timing of these programs, because right now, all the timing is the same. And the amendments that I would like to advocate for, and I've worked with the county treasurers and they're in agreement with these, would basically offset the timing. It would ensure that the statewide program, that we complete the process, we know exactly how much we refund, and then we would report to the county treasurers what we had refund and what the amount was, who received those refunds. Then they would start to administer their program, take applications, and their refund checks would go out no later than December 30th of that year. And so I think that would ensure that we are not refunding in excess of the total amount of the tax bill that the taxpayer paid in the first place. So at some point, I'll offer that language.
This next, or what would you like? Oh, we have a question. Representative Northrup.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the gatekeeper in this then turns into the county treasurer to make sure that there's not double dipping.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, go ahead.
Representative Northrup,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
the bill does not prohibit double dipping currently. The law does not prohibit, and it was discussed briefly during the last session. Did we want a provision that if they received money on the statewide program that they wouldn't be eligible? And at that particular time, the answer was no. Let me explain the math a little bit behind that. So if I own a property and my property taxes are $1,500, and the maximum that can be refunded based on the median residential property tax bill within your county, let's say that median property tax bill was $1,000 and you're only eligible for $500. Well, my bill was $1,500. So it is possible that I could get the $500 from the statewide program and an additional $500 from the county program. And basically, I've still paid $500 net that I didn't get refunded back. And so that was the discussion at the time. During the interim discussion, it was not so much that the interim committee was concerned about getting both the statewide and the county amount, but making sure that these property owners weren't receiving more money than they actually paid in the first place.
Right. And you're gonna talk, we're gonna deal with that when we look at
Yes.
the bill. Go ahead, another question, Representative Oakley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Hanson. So, and actually, since there isn't language with the county program, then it would be optional if it was a county that was doing it. So actually it would require like this quote unquote double dipping or whatever if it was higher. I mean, it would happen automatically that they would receive both.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, obviously they would have to apply. It's possible that they could receive both. It should be noted that at this point for 2022 refunds, my knowledge is that we for sure have for sure have 4 counties that have put funding in their budgets to provide these refunds. And I think there's a 5th that's considering it. And so the other counties don't have the option at all for that funding. And it is, interestingly enough, it's the county that is providing this refund. It's not spread out over all the taxing entities. It will come from the county general fund should they implement the county option program.
Another follow-up?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Hanson. But so my question was, with the current statutory language for the counties that are funded, this double dipping would actually happen automatically. It would be like required. They couldn't say, oh, you've received state funding, so we're not going to do it, because current language wouldn't allow that. It would happen. Is that
Go ahead,
accurate?
Director.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Oakley, absolutely. If they apply and they qualify based on the statutory criteria and that established by the county, they could get both.
Very good. Any further questions while we keep working this? Okay, thank you, Director. Do we want to go through your materials now, or do you want to?
we can do that,
On the bill, and then we'll come back on the bill.
Mr. Chairman, probably look at the application itself.
Okay,
That,
let's just all find that. This is right here.
correct.
Okay.
We print those applications on an annual basis as a matter of how we administer it. We will automatically send applications out in 2022 to everyone who applied in 2021. We do that in late March, early April. It typically is just a matter of timing. We didn't know the funding was available for the program until after the session last year. So it just depends on how quickly we can get the applications printed based on the statutory requirements. I wasn't going to go through the application in detail, but if you'd like, Ms. Urick would be happy to do that.
Okay, members, we'll just maybe pause a minute and let everybody take a quick look at it. And my first question was, can you do this application online? Is that possible? Go ahead, Zurich.
Mr. Chairman, representatives, yes, we just incorporated, ETS helped us out last year for the 2021 tax year, and we were able to get that online reporting up and operational for the 2021 tax year.
What kind of folks taking advantage of that, or are you still, most of them are paper?
Chairman Harshman, we actually had about 500 applicants that applied online for the 2021 tax year. It was fairly new, so we are assuming that hopefully that will grow.
Yeah, okay, very good. Members, as you look over this, do you have any questions or?
Mr. Chairman, it should be noted that we do not audit these applications. The Department of Audit does not audit the applications. We take the information that's provided by the taxpayer in good faith. When they sign a statement saying that they do not have assets in excess of 133,000, we don't have an audit function that goes out and ensures that that's the case. But that being said, I truly believe that if the program was providing money to those who didn't qualify, we would hear more. We do not get phone calls from the public stating, you know, I know for a fact that X owns 3 other houses and they applied and qualified for the program. We're not seeing that, but I did want to make sure the committee understood that it's not an auditable.
Representative Oakley has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Hanson, would there be a way to attach it or have a check via the county tax assessors? Would that be something, as far as this audit, a place that might have knowledge of the assets and valuation? Would that be helpful?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Oakley, we've not investigated that in the past. Certainly, we could communicate. I do know that county treasurers, so to apply for the program, you can apply either the statewide program. You can apply either in the county treasurer's office, submit the application to the treasurer, and they forward them to us, and we cut the checks, or you can apply at the state, at the Department of Revenue. I do know that there has been communication. We do have some county treasurers that provide us with additional information, and then it puts us in a unique situation in that you know, we do reach out to the property owners. It doesn't happen often, but we do reach out to the property owners and indicate, you know, in your county, the county treasurer has indicated that you also own a 4-plex at this address. Is that true? But the county treasurer is only going to know the information for property owned within their boundaries. And so it is certainly far-reaching, but there is a great deal of communication between treasurers and the department.
Okay. Okay, very good. So that's the application. What next? Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's obviously every time we send out an application, we send out a pamphlet with that as
Okay.
well. The pamphlet itself provides the qualifications. The pamphlet indicates what the 3/4 of the median household income criteria is. So the applicant can actually look and see, okay, you know, I exceed that income amount, so I'm not going to fill out the application. So that information is provided. Included in your packet we gave you some comparisons of what that median residential tax bill is, but unfortunately, it's too early. We don't know what the numbers are for household income for 2022. We get those numbers from the Division of Economic Analysis, and they're just not available yet. We typically get those in the March timeframe. Hopefully, we answer any questions, between the instructions on the application itself and the pamphlet. All of this information is also available on our website at revenue.wio.gov. And as soon as we have the updated numbers, we'll be posting that as well.
So they can, Director, they can use either their county number or the statewide number. Is that right? It's an either or? Or do they have to use their county number? As I just read that real quick.
That is correct, Chairman Harshman. It will be to the county's income or the state's, whichever is the greater of.
So folks in Fremont, Goshen, they're gonna use the state average for sure. Okay, very good. Okay,
So with that, Mr. Chairman,
that's
just a
great.
quick review of the history, the 2019 versus 2021.
now I just wanna make sure we all got the right, is this a longer, we have a longer, okay, very good.
It's the same numbers. That particular document just shows that it was not funded in 2020. It's same numbers, just formatted a little differently. So 2019, we had 1,587 applicants statewide, of which 1,411 qualified, for a total of total refunds of $752,320. In comparison to the 2021 refunds, 4,395 applications, of which over 3,000 qualified, and we sent out refund checks no later than that end of September of $1,856,033,032. Looking at the differences in the average dollar refund, $533 to about $601.
Wow, I know you guys did a great job of getting the message out, and I think the local governments helped you as well. I mean, for the first time, really saw it last spring. I mean, it's just really everywhere. I think that made a big difference.
Well, as you know, Chairman Harshman, we did see some increases in our residential property taxes, and I didn't probably include that in what I just handed. Let me find it in my stack here. At any rate, I thought I had those 2022. Did you provide those? Okay, then she's my right hand on this
Yeah.
deal. I'll tell you what, the 2022, we saw similar increases in 2021 compared to 2020 taxes that you're going to see reflected in this document that basically, yes, it's not pretty, but it gives you the meat of the story. What we've done here is provide you with a report that looks like this.
Okay,
This is like a percent change on the
percent
right.
change on
Mhm.
it, got it.
And what that
that.
provides you is a comparison of the 2022 median tax amount in each of the counties versus what that 2021 median tax amount was, and what the difference is. So what you see there going through Albany County, there was a 19% change, a 19% increase in the median residential property tax bill. As you go further down, you'll see Lincoln County, 28%, Niobrara, the 5%. Some of the counties had substantial increases, some did not. But I think what this indicates is we just had a lot more people that were needing help last
Yeah.
year.
Yep.
And that's the numbers that you'll see reflected. And then,
Can I just have a quick question? Representative Oakley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director Hanson. I know I should know, but can you tell us the 5 counties that are funded?
Yeah, that'd be good.
Chairman Harshman, Representative Oakley,
That have their own county programs.
those that have funded their own programs, Sublette, Lincoln, Fremont, Converse, and Laramie is a possible.
Sublette, Lincoln, Teton, Converse, and
And Laramie,
possibly.
possibly if it's included in their budget this next fiscal year.
You said Converse, right?
Mhm.
1, 2, 3, 4, and a possible fifth. That's what I got.
That's
Okay.
what I have as knowledge today.
Chairman.
Okay, very good.
Okay.
Representative Byron has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Hanson, can you, and maybe you'll get to this, briefly tell us on the number of applicants, number approved, and then the number denied? If you're not auditing, is the denial just, how do you get to that number? and
Yeah,
how
that's
do
a
you figure
good
that out?
question. What's the number, why do you deny so many of these, or what's the problem?
Chairman Harshman, Representative Byron, the denials are based on if they do not qualify for the program. And I can tell you 70% of them, based on the 2021 tax year, were rejected because they were over the income limit.
Okay. And that, you talk about that in the fiscal note with this potential change to the statute.
That is correct.
We'll change that. Okay, very good. Okay, any other questions? Okay, well, good, that's helpful. Okay, what next do you have for us?
So, Mr. Chairman, as I had mentioned, there was $3 million that the legislature appropriated for this biennium for the property tax refund program. Obviously, our estimates of approximately 1.5 million per year were not sufficient. So the governor had requested in the budget an additional $1 million. And so it's important to keep that in mind. I don't want to go too far into the weeds on what Joint Appropriations Committee has
Could you
done with
tell me
that, but I
again
could.
That the original appropriation for the biennium was how much?
3 million.
3 million. And you spent 1.8.
We spent 1.8, and the governor has suggested and asked that within the budget, the supplemental budget, that an additional million is added for a total of 4 million. The
Well, you-
JAC, as the budget exists, when you begin to work that budget, you're going to find that the JAC has upped that amount from 1 million additional to 5 million additional. So that's a total of 8 million. But they have the following language in the budget bill, and I'm not sure how to interpret it, but it includes this language: of the general fund appropriation, $5 million should be reduced by $1 for every dollar up to $5 million appropriated to the property tax refund program under the statute, or a substantially similar program that provides property tax relief to substantially similar taxpayers for residential property taxes to be collected during fiscal year 2024. We'll be discussing that with them because the appropriation for this biennium is for 21 taxes and 22 taxes. Any tax relief that may come out of this session in their statement that says collected during fiscal year 2024, those are actually 2023 taxes. We
Right.
will be coming back to the legislature in the next budget session to get funding for this program for those taxes. So,
Sounds like they're off a year.
yeah.
We can
But
try to
at any
fix it.
rate, I just wanted to make mention that when you get the budget bill, you'll see this $8 million figure. Now,
So let me just make sure, Director, I've got this right. So we had 3 million, you spent 1.8, there's 1.2 left. Governor asked, that's over what he asked. But right now, so we had 1.2 left, and right now the appropriations put another 5.
correct. The
So
governor asked
there
for
is
one.
6.2 in there right now for this next fiscal year.
That
With
is
some
true
language that
without,
we'll have to
but it
fix.
has this catch.
Okay, I just wanted to,
Yes.
okay.
So
Very good. So
we're-
I'm just
we were
thinking about-
hoping to have a total of $4 million to
Right.
fund the program as the law exists today. But today, we're talking about changing
You're
the
talking a
criteria.
two-year number. You're talking a
Right,
2-year.
that's
I'm
a
just talking
2-year.
a 1-year number to get us through before we come back here next year.
Right.
And we'll talk about the fiscal note to this bill as we get moving, because it's
Yes.
gonna cost more.
That's
You know,
correct.
there's no doubt.
And
So-
we have provided a fiscal note, Mr. Chairman, based on the changes and criteria
Right.
from the current statute on
Just want
what's
to make sure
reflected
where
in the
we have in
bill.
the budget is good for this next year. I think Representative Swanitzer had a question. Did you?
Maybe, Mr. Chairman, I think you might have answered it, Director. When appropriations did that, I assume it was part of your budget hearing testimony. Did you include to that committee, are they aware of this bill moving through the Revenue Committee as an interim sponsored bill? And did that weigh on their decision, if you know, to increase that fund based on this legislation?
Mr. Chairman, so we had a brief discussion during the Department of Revenue's hearing, but it was actually a governor's letter to JAC asking for the additional $1 million, estimating that, 2.2 million would cover the program for this biennium. So there was testimony afterwards. I wasn't present in the room. There was testimony afterwards that the JAC believed that the program would have more applications. They didn't discuss this bill, but my testimony was that we would provide a separate fiscal note for this legislation, which we have.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, what next do you have? We have,
So,
I have
Mr.
three
Chairman.
more with blue highlights,
Okay, yes,
half, 3/4, and 125.
okay. It's up to you. Mr. Chairman, when I met with the County Treasurers Association, we felt that it was easier to have a document that had not just the amended language, but a document that provided all the current statutory language and then also the proposed amendments that we had advocated for, and the county program to follow. So with your approval, I'd like to hand the committee
Yeah.
this document as well.
Sure.
So, Mr. Chairman, we talked about the changes related to the statewide program. On the document that you are being provided, everything that's just in black, that's the statewide program. That's everything that's in current law. On page 2, while what the language that you see in F in red, while that is the practice of the Department of Revenue when we complete the program for a tax year and send out all the refunds, we always give the county treasurers a report. But we thought it was important to put it in statute that the department shall prepare a list of applicants together with the amounts of their refunds per county and forward it to each county treasurer no later than September 30th. That would be a new paragraph F. And that would be the only amendment that we would ask for on the statewide program. Following that, you'll see in red, it just says county refund program statutes. And again, it's everything related to the county refund, but what the amendment would be in Romanet 6, capital A, to change the application date from the first Monday in June to the first Monday in September for the county option program. That way we've completed our process before they start taking applications. And then, Mr. Chairman, on page 3, in capital E, please ignore the language that talks about in no instance shall the amount of the county refund exceed the total amount, because when we were working on this, we didn't have the final version from the interim work, and we see that it's already addressed in the bill that you have before you, so you don't have to worry about that. So the only other change that we would advocate for is in the last sentence, strike September and insert December.
On page 6, line 19 of the bill.
So, Mr. Chairman, we believe.
So you think that language we have proposed in this bill is basically, it's not exactly like yours, but it covers the same deals every,
It covers the same
yeah,
protection,
same issue, yeah.
yes.
Now, just before I'm gonna flip you back to page 2 of your handout. And I just wanna kind of track that into this bill as we're,
Mr. Chairman, I believe the appropriate place.
That is in paragraph A. On the
Would
county,
be page 4, line 18, is
County
where
re-
that department shall prepare a list would be inserted. That's the end of the statewide program language.
okay, and so we don't have paragraph D in this bill.
That's correct. That's
So
why I
this will
thought
go on line 18 on page 4, new
that's
paragraph
correct.
E,
New-
or
new
paragraph F.
paragraph F.
Gotcha.
Correct. And then, Mr. Chairman, on page 5, and it would have to be line 3 because we don't have capital A in this bill either,
Right,
where we strike June and add
Okay.
September.
so I'll have to pull that in, that paragraph A. Got the attorney next to me here cracking this, so. September. Got that?
And then, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, on page 6, line 19, strike September,
Right,
insert December.
and okay, good, that makes, well, I appreciate you bringing the whole statute, and that's good, that's helpful. Okay,
With that, Mr. Chairman, briefly, I'd like to cover the fiscal note for the bill,
Could you-
increase in the criteria.
before you, these 3 sheets that you have, half, 3/4, and 125, or half, or what is it? It's half, 3/4, and 125%. You want to just knock these out real quick before we go ahead?
Yes,
Ms.
Chairman Harshman, representatives, we provided those just so that you would have an idea of what the calculation would be on those criterias. We provided the median property tax for 2022 compared to the 2021. The 2022 numbers are finalized, so those income amounts are denoted there.
So really, the changes that we're looking at is the 3/4 sheet and the 125 sheet that is
Correct.
proposed in this bill. And so average Wyoming income at the very top. So members, and I'm finding that 125 at the bottom blue thing here, so I'll just say, so currently, the 3/4 Wyoming at the very top, 51,975, and if this bill is successful, it'll move to 86,625. So folks under that income level, or under their counties.
However,
average
Mr.
income.
Chairman, that's just an estimate, because all we have at this time is the 2021 household income amounts. When we receive the 2022 household income amounts from economic analysis, we'll take those numbers and apply the
So folks,
125.
yeah, that's right. So it's not gonna go down, it's probably gonna go up.
Yes,
But like
Mr.
folks in
Chair.
Campbell County, everybody under 107,000 could apply for this. Folks in, where is that, Sweetwater, or is that sublet, 104,000, Teton, 122,000. Okay, just so we're that's the impact of this bill, takes it from, Campbell before was 64,000, goes to 107,000. Okay, just so this is really helpful, so thank you. Because when we made these amendments, there were people, in fact, I made these amendments, as I recall, in committee, and people were looking at me like, careful, you might go too high, and so I think that's part of the discussion of this committee, so this is really helpful.
And Mr. Chairman, a key component of the bill and the amendments that you offered, so right now, it's 1/2 of your property tax bill up to the median residential property tax
That's the
amount.
real trigger, though.
The bill would increase that to 90% of your property tax bill up to the 1/2 of, up to the median residential property tax bill. So what that ultimately does is for your lower valued properties, if your tax bill is $500 and the maximum amount that can be refunded is $600, you could get up to 90% of your tax bill refunded. You'd still have 10% that you wouldn't get refunded. But it really does focus the program on those lower valued properties.
Or generally folks who've been there a while or make less money. Yeah, very
Well,
good.
the amount of the refund check is significantly higher, proportionate to the property tax bill in itself. The lower valued homes are going to get more of their property taxes refunded than the higher value homes because we still have that cap of 50% of the median residential property tax bill.
And that, I think, is the real check on all of it, and it, I think, accounts for these really large increases, but that 50% is not changed in this bill, that stays there. So that's really the check on all of it. Okay, very good. Okay, now you
So,
were
Mr.
going,
Chairman,
where were you going before?
In addition to the $4 million that was requested, the fiscal note on this bill was $2,040,000 to implement these changes, and in anticipation of the increased numbers. So just keeping in mind that this $2,040,000 would need to be in addition. And the reason I say that is because the money that the budget bill has that caveat that just says, for any other property tax relief that's provided, we're going to take away money from this funding. And so to ensure that there is funding available, and the effective date of this bill is immediately. So what that means to us as we administer it, that means for the refunds that we'll process this year for 2022 taxes, this is all applicable. These are the new criteria, and this provides immediate relief, refunds of their 2022 property taxes that they've already paid. So just wanted to ensure that was noted. And the other thing I wanted to point out is, based on how the programming was done by Enterprise Technology Services and that system that we have, we can accommodate the changes in this statute without any additional programming funds.
So really, we need funding in this immediately for really 2 years of taxes. Just one.
Just 1 year, because
So-
we will, our budget for the next biennium will have the
2 years.
request for the next 2 years. So this biennium is only 2021 refunds and 2022 refunds,
We just have 22 left.
correct?
And that is, and that fiscal note says 2 million. And so we've got money to do it. It's in the budget. So there's no worries on that. I guess my question is, we don't need to worry about the appropriators, as long as that survives in the budget. 2 million's the number, as I look at the fiscal note, is what you're estimating. Or is
Mr.
it more than
Chairman,
that,
we need 2 million in addition.
to the 1.2 you have left?
We need, no, Mr. Chairman, unless I'm misunderstanding you. So we asked for an additional million, which would be a total of $4 million, is what we needed under current law with the current criteria, because we've already spent 1.8 million of the
Right.
3 million that was appropriated. So we were asking for 4 million just to be able to cover all the refund checks under current law. We need an additional $2 million to cover the increased number of applications and the increased dollar amount of those refunds based on
Very
this
good.
legislation.
And there is enough money in the budget then to cover this bill.
But there's a caveat that says we have to subtract dollar for dollar. And you'll understand what I'm
Okay.
saying when you see the
We
budget
need to
bill.
clean that language up. bottom line.
That would be
Yeah.
very much appreciated,
we'll
Mr. Chairman.
Get on that. I got a little budget amendment spinning in my head right now, so
So,
we'll get
so
that taken
with
care of.
that budget amendment, if I may plant a seed. During the COVID-19 cuts, the Department of Revenue, the position that we had that administered this program, mostly on a full-time basis, it was vacant, and so we offered that in our cuts. So we no longer have the position to administer this program. I had requested funding for that position back during our budget hearings, but it didn't make the cut. So basically what we did last year is we had employees from every division except the liquor division, King and property refund program applications and processing this, pulling them from their other duties to process this program. And as you see, it was a lot of applications. I requested to get that position back. If there's any way, I'm asking, please, it's $108,000. That's all I need. $108,000 to fund that position that is responsible for administering this program would be greatly appreciated.
Okay, very good. Taking notes. Okay, thank you. Okay. Anything else you guys have? Anything? Representative Zwanitzer has a question.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not sure it's for the interim committee or for Ms. Henson. When we talk about the 120, I just, any more information on why the interim committee settled from going from 3/4 to 125% and the half to 90%? Were those based on any kind of economic numbers or more
Mr.
explanation?
Chairman,
Go ahead.
Representative Zwanitzer, the amendment was proposed by Chairman Harshman, so I will let him cover that question.
Do you remember doing that?
Mr. Chairman, when I proposed those, the quick answer is no, not based on any data that we saw in this. We just wanted to, we know this is the most effective, quickest relief that we can give people who really need it, bottom line. And so we wanted to expand that. But the part that didn't get changed is half of the county, can exceed half of the county. And particularly what was on my mind at that time, I'd had conversations with a daughter of a 90-plus-year-old resident in Teton County. She's lived in her house for over 50 years, and it's gone from 4 million to 12 million in 1 year. And how can we, that was what, so that you have some of these really unique situations. So that was that part. But I thought the 50% part kept in check some of this. So we have a really unique thing going on. There's some counties, this is not a problem. It's not an issue. And then there's some counties with some big increase. So the answer is no.
Okay.
But it's trying to find the right, just the Goldilocks, just right spot.
Mr.
So-
Chairman, the beauty of this program is we can do this for 1 year, see what it costs, and then we could come back.
Yeah.
It could be changed each year.
Okay. Any other questions? Then we're going to open up public comment. Okay, thank you, Director, and you'll be here for further questions if we have them. Thank you for all the materials today and all your good work. Ms. Shirk, appreciate your good work. This is a very important program, so we want to make sure we keep it moving. Okay, public comment, any state agencies, any elected officials, any other legislators? If you're, and now just looking at our time, and we got another really important bill after this, so we're going to wrap this bill up in about the next 15 minutes, I'd like to. So that includes a roll call vote. So for or against the program, any suggestions, go ahead and line them up.
Okay,
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Dave Davis. I'm the Sweetwater County Assessor, but I'm also the president of the Wyoming County Assessors Association. And we are very much in favor of this legislation. As an assessor, the first person that people talk to about their valuation is the assessor. We send out a notice that has the current value, the prior year's value, the previous tax, and the estimated new tax. And that's when the phone calls happen. So in this situation, we are very, very appreciative of this program because we can take those people's concerns. We can make sure we have their property valued correctly. And as they leave the office, we can actually hand them the refund application. So we give them out like bubble gum. So I'm very, very grateful that you're expanding the requirements. And I hope that you will give the Department of Revenue some additional staff to help with the processing. But our association is very, very much in favor of this legislation. Thank you.
Okay, Assessor Davis, appreciate you being here. Any questions for the good assessor? Okay, thank you for your testimony today. Next, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Ken Gill, Laramie County Assessor. Not to repeat anything that Dave said, I just wanted to give you a short story. I was at one of our local establishments here, and a server came up to me. And I think so often we talk about these programs, but we never really see them work, right? And the server came up to me and she said, "Thank you so much for sending me a check." well, we know I didn't send a check, but she equated, you know, she knows what I do for a living. She equated that check with me. And I kind of explained, no, that's really the Department of Revenue and the legislature funding that. And she said, you just don't understand how much that check helped me, how much it helped me this year. And I think she got it close to Christmas or something like that. And she goes, I just want to let people know that it really did help. And I really took that to heart. You know, so often we do talk about these things and we never really see where it benefits the person on the ground.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. Any questions for the good assessor? Okay, thank you very much, both of you, for being here today. Mr. Reaman, go ahead. Morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Jeremiah Reaman here on behalf of the Wyoming County Commissioners Association. Obviously, we're in support of this legislation. I wanted to just make a few comments relative to it. There's been some conversation of the county option, and I appreciate the amendments that this bill offers to that program so that there's uniformity across the state. There was some discussion about who's offering the county option program, and I want to provide some clarification there. There are 4 counties that are currently offering the program. Those 4 counties are Converse, Sublette, Teton, and Lincoln. Laramie County is considering that for this coming fiscal year. There was some reference to Fremont County. Fremont County is not offering the county option program. Instead, they reduced their mill levy by 2 mills.
So this is what I marked down: Teton, Sublette, Lincoln, and Converse.
Converse.
And a question mark by Laramie.
Laramie is considering it.
Oh, really? I didn't hear Fremont. I didn't mark it anyway. Okay, very good. Thank you for that.
Absolutely. Mr. Chairman, on that point, there's been some conversation, not amongst this committee that I've seen, but as this topic came up in the Appropriations Committee, some said, you know, I really am hesitant on expanding this program because the locals don't have skin in the game. And I just want to take a second on that point. And the director mentioned this, but I want to put a fine point on it. When the county offers these optional programs, they're doing that at their expense. So all of the other taxpayers, the schools, the special districts, the municipalities are made whole in that equation. They're still getting that tax revenue, and that's coming at the expense of the county. So from my perspective, we've got a lot of skin in the game when counties are offering these programs, and just wanted to make that point. I also wanted to just make the point that this is the most effective means of providing relief that we have. Now, there are a lot of other concepts that are out there. Those have a lot of financial and fiscal impacts across the state to your local governments. This is the most effective. And to put a fine point on that, if you reduced all of the county mills and just eliminated the county mills in every county, 12 mills is what we can assess, that's going to save an average homeowner somewhere between, let's say, $225 and $250. You just heard from the director, the amount of these refunds are significantly in excess of that. And for some homeowners, it can, under this legislation, move up to 100% of their entire tax liability. So just want to make the point, this is the most effective means that we can, and we support that. We also support the amendment that was brought by the director relative to timing. It makes sense so that we're lining up these payments where the counties come in on the backside of the state's program, and appreciate the support that we received in implementation of the program from the department as well. It has made the county options that much more successful. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'd stand for any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions by Representative Oakley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Reaman. I want, if you will, and I don't want to put you in a bad place as far as discussing policy, but I want to start discussing this 125%. What are your thoughts on going from 3/4 to 125%?
Mr. Reaman.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Oakley, great question. The chairman mentioned this, that when he was throwing out these figures, I was one of those individuals sitting in the back of the room going, oh God.
The fiscal note on this bill just went way up, and, it's gonna cause us problems. Nonetheless, it was important marker for us to put out there and see what the fiscal note came back. I think the fiscal note didn't come back as remarkable as I was concerned it might. And for that reason, I think we stand in support of that particular change as well as the others that this represents.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you for your testimony. Gonna start, who is next? I'm just gonna, go ahead, Mr. Cock, go ahead.
Chairman Committee, I'm Tom Laycock with AARP Wyoming. We also stand in support of this bill. You've got a lot of options out for you this year in terms of property tax relief. We appreciate the fact that this is targeted, gets to the people that need it quickly without giving up the farm as some of the other options that you're going to have, may do, given the fact, nationwide, a third of all tax revenue is property tax. So this maintains some of our service levels within the state. I also need to offer a thank you to you as a legislature last year for funding the program we started hearing about 2 summers ago. Property tax relief was needed. Last year, you folks were able to fund it to the degree of $3 million, and we very much appreciate that. We also have to throw out an appreciation to Director Henson, who was key in helping us do outreach last year for how this program works and how folks can get their refunds. Interestingly enough, we do a teletown hall format several times a year where we dial out anywhere between 3,000 and 10,000 of our members, and whoever stays on, we're able to measure that and whatnot. Traditionally, the governor has the highest audience by far. Director Henson doubled his audience. And then so I hope you don't hold that over his head. But in fact, every piece of communication that's measurable that we've sent out over the course of the last year, if property tax is a part of it, the audience numbers are tremendous. That tells us that there's a need. In fact, for the next 2 weeks after Director Henson's call, we were getting calls to the office saying, I don't have the internet, I can't print this out. Can you print this out and send it to me? Anywhere from 5 to 10 a day. So it's a need. We appreciate where we're going with it, and we appreciate the targeted approach of the refund program. Thank you.
All the outreach as well. Went really well. Okay, and it'll get even better, I think. Okay. Go ahead, Ms. Harpstree.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Ashley Harpstree, Wyoming Taxpayers Association. As I've mentioned a couple times already, we run all of the different positions through an analysis against our cornerstones of taxation. And with that, we looked at, is it justified? Is it equitable among taxpayers? Does the proposal create a stable revenue stream? And finally, is the tax transparent, visible, accountable, and audible? Based off that criteria.
Excuse me. Sorry to interrupt, Ashley. Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Mr. Laycock, and there
We'll get
wasn't
him
an
in a
opportunity.
minute, right
Okay.
after Ms. Harpstree.
Okay.
Continue.
This is
I don't
before he
want
left
to
the
stop
room.
your
Thank you.
mojo
Sure.
there. You're going,
That's okay.
so keep
Thank you,
going.
Mr. Chairman. Based off that criteria, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, we strongly support House Bill 99 property tax refund as it stands to be sound tax policy for the following reasons. It's justified as property taxes have increased dramatically, and this provides that targeted relief. It is equitable as it applies to taxpayers that fall within the required criteria. The expansion of this program makes it more inclusive to the residents. It is stable as it protects the reliable revenue stream and provides relief to only those in need by affirmative action. It limits volatility as it is distributed within the targeted recipients. It is transparent as it expands a successful program currently in place. It does sound like you might need a visit about the audible piece, but for the most part, we really strongly support this. And like the previous testimony from the other constituents, this is one of the best options that's out there. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for Taxpayer Association? Representative Zwanitzer.
The same question Oakley has. The question is, you think the 125% right now threshold is fair across the board to all taxpayers?
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Zwanitzer, I feel like that's a policy decision on where you put that threshold.
Nice. We have another question. You're not getting off that easy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, so I really like, rather than weighing in as far as the policy, but the way that Representative Zwanitzer asked it, I want to push a little and see if do you think it's not about whether we should or shouldn't? Do you think it's equitable and fair for the taxpayers, as applied, do you think that it turns out equitable for the taxpayers across Wyoming?
Mr.
Go ahead.
Chairman, Representative Oakley, this is something I'd have to bring back and us analyze a little bit further with my group. But I think if you're looking for relief, and if all the taxpayers are complaining in all these income brackets, I'd be curious about the 70% that were denied and if they were in that income bracket. And so that would be something maybe to study to see if there was people in that higher income bracket saying that this is hard on them. So,
And I think the fiscal note took that into account when they.
I
that's
don't
my
know,
understanding.
to be
Yeah.
honest.
Okay, very good. Now, Ribsam Store, back on the hot seat. Mr. Laycock, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Laycock, I have heard from constituents in my community who obviously have a very high tax liability from their primary residence, and concerns over the asset limitation that requires IRAs or a bona fide pension, where in this instance, they're probably retired. They may have been self-employed. They built up nest eggs. That's actually the source of their current income, other than Social Security. These are mostly people who are retired. They may be still working part-time. But my question is whether your memberships have expressed a similar concern with the asset limitations for being eligible for the program, and whether there's some workarounds that you've discussed. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, thus far, we haven't heard that necessarily as a concern. Now, we did get a number of folks that called and said, we're right at the threshold. We're right there. Do you see any chance that the threshold ends up moving up from that 0.75%? And we kind of let them know what you guys were looking at through the course of the summer, and that seemed to be widely appreciated. But in terms of specific income based off of investments, we have not heard that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. O'Mueller.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Pete Obermueller, President of the Petroleum Association of Wyoming. Good morning, members of the committee. Speaking on behalf of the industry that is the largest taxpayer in the state and pays 54% of all the property tax in the state, we are heavily invested in all of this discussion about property tax this year. And in fact, perhaps some of you attended the learning session offered by the Business Alliance regarding the history of tax, but PAW has been very involved in this because the current constitutionally tiered system of property tax in Wyoming is a direct result of litigation that we filed in the late 1980s that set the system as it was today. There's some remarkable statements in that litigation that we filed about just back in 1985, how exactly the same business type entities in the same towns were being taxed at different assessment ratios all over the state in every town. It's crazy to read about it, quite frankly. I didn't even know. So we filed suit. We were paying 100% at the time, 100% of value. We still are today, and that's all fine. In 2021, we paid $581.4 million in property taxes, and our interest is making sure that whatever we do on property tax, that it does not structurally alter that system that we fought so hard for, that it does not drive further apart for Wyoming's revenue situation and future revenue. It does not drive further apart what we pay and what everybody else pays. So with that said, this is a bill we support. For many of the reasons they said, that previous testimony has said, it's targeted, yes, but it's also immediate. And that's, I think, what constituents are looking for, is immediate relief from property tax increases. At the end of the day, programs like this ultimately are subsidized by the property taxes that my members pay, and that's fine. That's totally fine in this case, because we recognize, and in fact, some of our members may be ones that apply, some of our member employees maybe folks that apply. That's entirely possible. But at the end of the day, subsidizing a program like this is much more sustainable than subsidizing a program that drives that wedge further and further apart in Wyoming, like some of the other suggestions that will come before you later. So, Mr. Chairman, we stand in support of the bill, and thank you for your time.
Representative Oakley has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Obermueller. So with subsidizing, I think that's appropriately said, the property tax. Will you weigh in on your thoughts about the differing levels? So going up to 125% of median household income.
Seems to be an issue. Go ahead.
It is an issue. And I very quickly get into my own personal opinion on this, which is always dangerous for an association to do. People have different opinions, but I think actually, to be totally honest, I think my member companies are agnostic on that issue for the most part. I think, as Ms. Harpstreet said, Director Henson mentioned that all those people that were denied this year. What would be interesting to know is if this bill were law now, how many of those people would have been accepted and what was the level of income that they were applying for? And that might give you an indication, because that would be people who felt like they needed it and applied and didn't meet it. And what was their level in that denial category that Director Henson talked about? That might give you an indication.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Representative Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here, Mr. Obermueller. You had mentioned that this disparity on the structural apparatus that we have the minerals, we have industrial, we have other, and there has been discussion about changing that rate for other. So is that what you're describing? Would that be one of those disparities that you're trying to avoid or you'd like to see us avoid?
Go ahead, Director.
Mr. Chairman, thanks. Yeah, that recognizing your time constraint, we can talk about that. There's a lot to say about that. There's stuff that there's options on the table before your body this year that we feel like are within the realm of your authority to do under the Constitution. There's several options on the table this year we think are not in the realm of your authority under the Constitution, and so we can talk about those as well. Changing the rate itself in the all other category, residential commercial, from 9.5 down is within the realm of your authority, certainly. But in terms of its ultimate impact on the revenue of the state and the sustainability and the impact on us, it's sizable.
Okay. Very good. Okay, thank you for
Thank you,
your
Mr. Chairman.
testimony. Okay, next, go ahead, introduce yourself.
Thank you, Chairman Harshman. Arne Jorgensen, Vice Mayor of the Town of Jackson. Thank you, committee. Very, very much want to just tag on with everyone else. I'm very supportive of this project. The Town Council has identified property tax relief and refund as a key element in our community. Don't need to go into the stories. We've all heard those stories. There's a couple of points that come up in this discussion that I just want to reinforce the point the director made, that what's nice about this program, it's very targeted. It's also something that can be tweaked every year. And I think going back to the question that several of you have asked about the 125%, I think that's a great example of something that we can continue to monitor. There's not going to be a perfect number. I think we're always going to be searching for that. I really like the shift that's happened. I think it will capture a lot of people that are truly, truly struggling. I think the other point that Representative Storer asked the question about, another item to look at tweaking as we move this process forward is how do we capture particularly small businesses and how they're building up a nest egg that may not be part of a formal retirement fund? Because that has been something that I've heard from constituents that have pushed them out of this program, even as it's currently structured. So very strongly in support of it. Thank you so much to you as a committee. I think the state office has been amazing in this process. I hear over and over again the good work that they do, and very, very much appreciate that and stand for questions. Thank you.
Questions of the Vice Mayor. Appreciate you traveling down here. Appreciate
Absolutely.
your testimony. Anyone else here would like to testify? And anybody online? Probably not. Okay. Okay, we are going to go ahead and close public comment on this and work the bill. And Director Henson, I'd like you to come back up here, you and Ms. Yerrick, if you guys would we're going to let you sit here, and if we have any questions, so you're not off the hot seat yet. But if we have questions by members to help us with any amendments, those kind of things. Okay, members.
Let me move the bill, Mr. Chairman.
It's been moved by Representative Zwanitzer. Seconded by Representative Northrup. Okay, members, we have House Bill 99 in front of us. I'm going to flip over to page 2. And just start working down through this, and are there any amendments? Now, one thing we added in here, and you can see you gotta live in the state 5 years, that's on line 13, that's original language, but we said you gotta live in your home 9 months a year. So if you kind of live 3 weeks and live somewhere else the rest of the year, it's not gonna work. So we added that, the committee felt really strongly about that, so that's in there. Any amendments on page 2?
Mr. Chairman, if
Go
I
ahead.
may, I would like to just clarify that in that document that I gave you that had the county option, for whatever reason, that language that talks about this occupancy of 9 months, in the bill that you passed last year that was the
not in
county option, that language was in the county option. So now
Okay.
this makes the statewide program mirror the county option.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, we're going to page 3 now.
Can I, one quick question?
Yeah, quick question.
Just want to make sure, immediate family members, that defined anywhere else in your statutes and revenue, that would just be up to you to administer, kids, siblings?
Yeah, Director?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Swanitzer, we do have rules on this program, Chapter 19, Department of Revenue rules. We anticipate emergency rules that we'll have to put in place, and we believe we can define that in rules.
Okay, now we're moving over to page 3, members. You can see that change from 3/4 to 125. Okay, and then, and I just want to bring this in a global sense. Flip over to page 4 before you start working this over. Page 4, lines 4 and 5, and you can see the assets have been raised. Total household assets from 100 to 150,000. But then if you go down, also to lines 12 and 13, a refund granted under this paragraph shall not exceed 90% of the applicant's prior year property tax. Again, I was thinking of that person in Teton County or somebody whose property taxes 90%. But I think the kicker that I did not amend in Revenue Joint Committee was on line 14. And in no instance shall the amount of the refund exceed over half of the median residential property tax liability in the county. And I think that's the safety marker that I think is really important, and that's why I didn't amend it. And so regardless of income levels, asset levels, we can, but I think that is an important part to keep in there. I'll just say that. Okay, so back on page 3, any amendments? Page 3, Representative Swanson.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to amend line 18 from 125% to 105%. And if I get a second, I'd be
Sure.
happy to explain.
Seconded by Representative Oakley.
I do feel 100% of the median of the county is fair, and then that extra 5%, because we know cost of living, things go up. With that percent change, that would encapsulate anybody within that year. I know there was one county that went up more than 5%, but I think that would be a fair policy statement across the board, especially not knowing right now how many other of these bills are moving through the process, and I think that's a better position to stand firm on.
Okay, we got a motion and a second on that deal. Any further discussion on this? Everybody understand this? Okay, motion is to take it from 125 to 105. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
That motion has failed. Okay, any other amendments on, now you want to call division, we can raise your hand.
but I actually tried there.
Well, that's the first rule when you're in the chair, you just make a decision. And somebody can always call division. Now, my hearing is pretty good on my right side, and I heard several no's. But all those in favor of that motion, please raise your hand. We'll count you up. 1, 2, 3. Okay, all those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Good.
Gosh. Okay. All right. My hearing's better than I thought. Okay. Page 3. Any other amendments? Flipping over to page 4 now. Any amendments? Okay. Now, we have amendments brought to us by the director, but, okay, how about, we could take these probably in a global sense, and then we can work with staff and get this all cleaned up. Anybody want to make that motion? Okay, Representative Bear, seconded by Representative Storr. And really, it takes into account all your motions, which are some of it onto statute that is not included in the bill, not printed on the bill. It's in the bill, but, okay. Been motion second. Any discussion? Question on the amendment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that's been adopted. Okay, so we've adopted the amendments brought to us by the department. Okay, members,
Chairman.
excuse me. Yeah, go ahead, Representative Bear. We're
Thank
on
you,
page
Mr. Chairman. I do have a comment. I think
Sure.
we should make it clear that on the handout from the department that I believe it's the last page that we're striking some of those changes. Is that correct? I just want to make sure I'm on the right
Right.
understanding of that.
Representative Bear, that we do not need that language that is on the last page, only the date,
Only the date
and
change.
only the date. And I've got that marked on my bill, and we'll get that all cleaned up. You bet. Thank you for that. That's good clarification. Okay, anybody else? Any other amendments on page 4? Moving to page 5. We put that amendment in.
Mr. Chairman.
Now, okay, Representative Storr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do not have the language, the exact language for this amendment, so it may be something that to take up on the floor, but if you'll indulge me for a moment, I'd love to get the input from the committee on this concept, which is essentially recognizing that for folks in Teton County, many of the folks, as we discussed, who have built nest eggs, but are looking at a property tax liability that is a significant amount of their income. And whether we could essentially create a limited circuit breaker. This could be limited by age for people over 65 with income perhaps less than the 3/4 of the median, with primary residents whose fair market value is limited to up to 3 million, let's say. And that's because a modest home in Teton County these days on a modest lot is now valued at about 1.5 million, and that translates to a $9,000 tax liability. And for a family that only has $45,000 in income, that's 20% of their income that they're paying in taxes. So we're trying to target that. And then, so limiting the primary residences, so people who have much more expensive residences would not qualify. And then the final limitation would be, would be the tax liability upon the primary residence that represents 10% or more of the total household income of which the person is a member. So, for example, if your home income is $50,000 and your tax liability is $5,000, then you would qualify. And what I'm really asking for is, could it then be that the asset exemption would not apply?
Well, and I think.
Director Henson's.
I think this would be a really good second reading amendment.
Okay.
I really do. I mean, it'll be too much for right now in our time, and I think we'd have to have that spelled out. And I think work with our LSO staff. And I think, I agree with your concept. I think that could fit nicely in this county program to allow counties, because it is an optional program and you want to allow counties to tailor it. Converse probably wouldn't do it, but I think Teton probably would. And so I think that, and I think that's something the committee would probably, you could probably get us all to co-sponsor with you. But I just think our time thing now and not having it right in front of us would be pretty tough.
I recognize that, Mr.
So,
Chairman.
but I appreciate you bringing the concept to us.
Thanks.
Okay, members, are there any other amendments? Okay, and we've got the amendment on page 6 on the date change on line 19 goes to December 30th. That's in that global amendment from the department. Okay. Any other amendments? Okay, seeing none. Question?
Question being.
Is being called. Okay. Please call roll on House Bill 99 as amended.
Representative Bear,
Aye.
Representative Byron,
Aye.
Representative Locke,
Aye.
Representative Northrup,
Aye.
Representative Oakley,
Aye.
Representative Storer,
Aye.
Representative Strock,
Aye.
Representative Zwanitzer, Chairman Harshman.
Okay, thank you. Thank you on the committee for your good work on that. Thank you, everyone who testified on that and your help in making, that's part of the process, make these bills, these little bills a little better. Okay, we got another nice bill in front of us, and this is House Bill 121. And we've got our Representative Lawley here as prime sponsor. Welcome to the committee. Glad you're here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, committee. I am delighted to have the opportunity to introduce House Bill 121 to you. With your permission, I'd like to give a little bit of an overview, and then we can kind of do however you want with the time remaining. I can walk you through the bill specifically, or you can kind of ask me some specific questions, whatever works with the time that we have, if that's okay. Okay, all right, thank you. I appreciate it, Mr. Chairman, having these two discussions together. They're helpful. They were helpful for me, especially with the amendment that you just had concerning the, well, not amendment to, but the not amending the bill about the amount and the requirement on terms of how much income a person has. And it may affect a little bit of the discussion here because I envisioned this bill with the current law, and we'll talk a little bit about pathways because they're going to become important in terms of the distinction. This is, again, another relief bill. And so it came out of discussions by constituents, no surprise there. But as those discussions arised, I began to look at the property tax statutes, which I hadn't spent a lot of time with, quite frankly. But as I began to look into that, it became more and more complicated. And I felt like, based on the specific concerns brought to me, that my best efforts would be in the area of relief. And so that's what I bring to you, is that House Bill 121 is really a taxpayer relief. It's really a retooling of a statute that's already there. It's amending the statute, the current statute for property tax deferral, and that's Wyoming Statute 39-13-107. And that statute has been on the books for quite a few years, and it has not until very recently been used at all, which was kind of a mystery. Some people offered me some thoughts about that, but I think we're going to find in the repealer what I think is the most objective evidence of why it has not been used. And that's what I want to address in this amendment. So it is, because as I alluded to, most recently been used in Teton County. And again, Representative Storr and others can give more details about that experience, but that's where it has been recently used. But the current statute places the responsibility to administer and the deferral process, make rules and regulations, what I mean by that. It puts it on the counties. It puts on the counties the paperwork, as well as the financial burden for the deferral. And that's on every individual county. And that's what you're going to see in the repealer, is the requirement that they promulgate rules, and then they administer this. And I think for many, particularly rural counties, like the county I come from, the Bighorn Basin, that was just something they just didn't do. And you can't qualify to operate the program until you've done that. And so I think that's the most objective evidence of why I took the approach I did. The amendments that I offered to House Bill 121 address those issues. So the statute has some really good things already in it, like it only goes to your residential property, and it has some conditions. It has already 4 pathways, and we're going to talk about that, independent pathways to get to a deferral. And I know you all understand deferral, I'm sure, but for those that might be listening online, a deferral is a situation where the property tax collection is deferred, not the actual property tax itself. So eventually that tax is collected. The revenue is received. And so this statute becomes a lot about process and burden. So I really want to address 3 primary reasons, which are just mirroring what I just told you, for why this statute, I think, is going to work better and be really, for those that would need it, be something that's better for them. But I believe that it will be more utilized. And the reason is that, again, the burden of administration is removed from counties. The financial burden of the deferment is removed from counties. And the stigma of a tax lien is somewhat, I think, improved. There's been a lot of talk, I've had a lot of people talk to me, county assessors, about stigma, and I think stigma is real, but I think we can't really know. I think it may be overstated, and the reason we can't know is because counties never did it. So we can say, well, they didn't use it because of the stigma, but that's really not accurate. People didn't come to the counties and ask for this because the counties didn't offer it because they hadn't promulgated the rules. You see what I'm saying? So we really can't know that issue. I think, but I will admit stigma is real on a tax lien. But it's also something that really is because it is subjective, it changes with circumstances. So the stigma tax lien in one situation might be too much for me, but my situation gets worse. A tax lien seems much less of a stigma because of the other options are quite frankly worse. And so that's something to consider on the stigma issue. And it's just like it used to be a big stigma with filing bankruptcy. When I first started practicing law, that was a huge stigma. Unless you were going to do a Chapter 11, then we could kind of explain that to people, what we were doing and reorganizing. But that's not the same today. There's still a stigma, but it's not nearly as it was. So the stigma issue, I think, is a little bit overstated, but particularly because there's really an objective reason that was never even offered in the county. So again, it was a good idea, and I just think it just didn't quite work for the county, so it just was kind of laid aside. So in a nutshell, so what this bill does is it lifts the program out of the counties and into the Department of Revenue. They will administer it. And one of the advantages of that too is they will promulgate rules and approaches that are even, that they're fair across the board in terms of how they evaluate applications. It then, by taking it out of the counties up into the Department of Revenue, one of the great results for the counties is that the state bears that burden of the deferment. Ultimately, the state will be, that tax will be collected, but they bear the burden of the time of the deferment. And that for counties like I come from, rural counties, that is a big thing. That's a very important aspect. So it does it. And then the department, it calls it for them to promulgate some rules. We did take an approach in the statute, and this was actually suggested by LSO, of giving the department, and you see it pushed off. So we're trading off immediacy. And I'm okay to have this discussion, and the committee considered this. I want them to know what we're considering. There's the immediacy of it, which is how I originally had asked for it to be written. But then there was the suggestion of there might be some questions by this committee, and for example, about how these rules are promulgated. Since there's a limited amount of money, and the statute calls for and requires that the department can only defer to the amount they've been appropriated. So if there's no money, they can't defer. So how will they decide who gets one and who doesn't? So some important issues about the promulgation of those rules. So LSO had suggested that we give it a little time, give the department time to promulgate those rules and bring them back during the interim. And so that pushed off, and that's what you see as it's currently written. And that trades off the immediacy of it. So I just point out that to you, and maybe that's something for your committee to consider. So again, I want to go back a minute to the issue of stigma, because I do think it is an issue here. But here's one of the ways I do think we address stigma by pulling it out of the counties. If I already have some concerns about, a tax lien, but I feel like I'm going to maybe need one, I would much rather ask someone in Cheyenne that I do not know and will not see at the grocery store or the football game. I think it makes it a little bit better in the area of stigma. So with that, Mr. Chairman, if you would prefer, I can start going through the statute, or we can start.
Well, the first several pages are just that movement from local to the department, but I think the qualifiers is what the committee is going to be really interested in too, and that starts where on page 8 basically is where you've got them laid out. Is that right? I mean, the rest, as I read the bill, it's the movement piece, not really much policy piece, just movement.
Right. Well, you see, I will say page 7, Mr. Chairman, line 17, we start with the definition of one of the first pathways, which is income-based.
Yeah.
And remember, all the pathways are independent. It's not you have to qualify under each of these. And this may go back a little bit to Representative Storr's question about income restrictions on refunds. And this is where this income number here in page 7, starting line 17, section M, this definition was what was already in there. I did not mess with that. Again, at that time, it still fit nicely as a broader path than the refund statute. Now it's not a broader path, quite frankly. That number, I had LSO kind of calculate this because, quite frankly, numbers is not my thing. But roughly, the base number would be about $70,000 in today's dollars. Then there's some accommodations by county. So basically, that would be adjusted. But just to give you an idea of what that is, and where, and again, that's another place the committee might want to look at, because I think the concept, policy-wise, is the pathways for deferment should be, as a matter of policy, broader, because ultimately the tax will be collected. They provide avenues for people that don't have avenues under a refund type program. But that's where we begin there. And so then we get into the different pathways. So 4 of the 5 pathways that are in the bill were already in the statute. The first one is, as you can see on page 8, the owner, first of all, I want to point this out because I think it's kind of important anyway. The statute contemplates an affidavit as a part of that, not just a simple application, but an affidavit. And that's going to become important because there's people that may have interest in the property and they have to co-sign that affidavit. But that's something, for those again who don't know, something that's signed under oath before a notary. So they're making representations in that regard, and that could be important. So that there are basically, again, 4 that were already in the statute, but the qualifiers, the income is the first pathway. And the second one is age, and it's over 62 years old. Again, independent pathway. You're 62 years old, you have some struggles for whatever reason in paying your taxes, you qualify at least to submit an application. So the next one, again, was already in the statute, is a person with disabilities, basically it has a Social Security disability. And the next one is, it more actually goes to the issue that we're in right now, which is the owner at least purchased their property at least 10 years prior to the beginning of the tax year. So that kind of begins to address the issue we have where people own their property a long time, but we have this big step up in valuations. And but again, that's an independent. And I keep saying that because this statute goes beyond the current problem that we have. It really envisions many different situations in which a person can find themselves, and a deferment would give that relief. So, and then I have added a 5th, and that 5th is the applicant is basically a disabled veteran that has a compensatory service-related disability by the VA. I feel like this is just good policy, especially as we're creating broad pathways. So those are the areas, Mr. Chairman, of which you would qualify to apply for a property deferment. Okay. That's right. Yes.
Okay, we got 15 minutes. Very good. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just can you describe what you have done in here in terms of what has changed in terms of how so a person who takes this deferment, what are the conditions and what is the process of, because obviously there's a tax lane of reclaiming the money for the tax lien. What is the impact here? It looks like it's changed a little bit to this. The conditions are abandonment of the property, that, the death of the property owner. Can you just talk to that section a little bit and make that more clear?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Locke, that's a great question. That's part of the statute that talks about how ultimately the deferment is met. And so it could happen a lot of different ways. The statute doesn't actually specifically mention this, although it talks about not having a prepayment sort of penalty of any kind. So a person could actually have an improved situation and they could simply pay off that lien, just like you might do in any other type of lien. So that's one way. But the others you mentioned about abandonment, they're just simply talking about anytime the statute, and this is what was already in the statute, but the process works that the deferment, first of all, the department will have the authority to assess any situation and determine that all the deferments are basically due and payable. And now, why might they do that without, again, on promulgation of rules? But it would be where they might see some kind of a unique deterioration in valuation, and they just felt that whatever reason, or that person's situation clearly changed. Maybe they read in the paper that they won the lottery or whatever, but they would say, those deferments, we can declare them due. So that's something the department would have the authority to do. But the most traditional way the deferment would be satisfied is when someone abandons a property, or they sell that property, or someone dies. So even a transfer on death deed, for example, would trigger the deferment of the payment of the deferred taxes up to that point. And I want to mention this about the deferment ramification or limitations. It's deferring within any one given tax year up to half of the taxes due, and that was already in the current statute. And that ultimately you can receive deferments every year until you reach the half of the valuation of the property, the market value of the property. And again, that goes to the whole concept of the deferment idea, and that there needs to be a preservation of the asset for the deferment to be able to be satisfied. Does that make sense? So that's why those ramifications are there. But I hope I answered your question, Representative Law.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to follow up, do you see, so these changes that you've made are taking an existing statute, and in your mind, are they making it easier to administer and apply, or are they providing a better path for the people who are using it? Can you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, they're doing both, because quite right now, just to be clear, other than Teton County, this program, while it's in the statutes, is not, to my knowledge, being used in any other county. Because again, the repealer tells us that basically to use the deferral option, the county must promulgate rules and they must set up processes. And I'm just sort of inferring, I know in my own county that's true, I've talked to my county assessor, but I'm inferring that that's probably the main reason most counties haven't. So it's making it more workable, but it's also making it easier for people to navigate for some reasons I've already mentioned.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative. And I don't know if you discussed this and I missed it, but I'm just looking at the dates, and it's for two and a half years, which I was just wondering, it's like a fiscal year. It starts like a calendar year and then ends a fiscal year. I just didn't know if there's any reason for that. Oh, I'm sorry. Page 9,
Okay.
Section 3, so lines 8 through 14, but just the appropriation and the dates.
Okay, for the appropriation. Oh, Mr. Chairman. Yeah. Representative Oakley, that section does have to do with the appropriation of funds. And my understanding of it is, again, it has to do with some more immediate appropriation, and then is asking for an annual appropriation put in the budget by the department. So the dates, yeah. Right, and that goes back to the issue I raised about the promulgating of rules and giving this committee the opportunity to get feedback from the department about how they're gonna set up those rules.
So this 200,000 is really to get the program started for the first biennium, and then it says the unexpended will revert, and it's the intent, legislature, that the department will come back with a standard budget request.
Yes, sir.
We have more.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
There's one other feature on the funding I do want to mention. It's in another part of the statute, but I had asked that the bill include a provision that as deferments are ultimately collected, that the department is authorized to create an account, and the money does not go back to the general fund. It goes into a special account where we ultimately maybe have a revolving account that is used for deferments funded by previous deferments. So ultimately hoping to.
There is a charge, right?
Interest.
1.5%.
The interest, well, the calculation, again, I'm not a numbers person. It's about three, right now would be about three, yes.
Okay, good. Any other questions? Other electeds in the room? Well, I see one. Two. Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Brenda Henson, Director of the Department of Revenue, and mainly, obviously, this is a new program, new administrative functions. In my reading of the bill, there's no appropriation for programming, staffing, but you've heard testimony about the effort that it's going to take, the follow-up. It's important to know historically why this was a county option program is they have the information. They know what the tax bills are. That's where the deeds are filed. We don't have access to real estate records. We don't have access to the assessment schedules. We do have a total value, but this truly is going to be an administrative piece where once we grant the deferral, and we're required to file a lien in the county where the property is located, there's a cost to filing a lien. All of these things will provide a cost. So that being said, I really appreciate that the sponsor provides the Department of Revenue till November of 2023 to determine what is that administrative cost going to be. We don't really have a good idea of how many we're talking. Unfortunately, as you know, we have to put a program together. We have to have the software developed, whether we have 10 applications or we have 1,000 applications. So we'll have a better idea of what that's going to cost to administer this at the state. The amount of the appropriation in my reading of the bill, that $200,000 can only be used to pay property taxes for those individuals that are granted the deferral. And so that is my understanding. We'll need to reach out to Teton County. The sponsor of the bill is absolutely right. My recollection is that Sheridan County funded it initially when this went on the books, but then actually didn't have much interest in the program, and then they haven't funded it. So keeping in mind that when county commissioners fund these programs, in Teton County, they put X amount of dollars aside for deferral. And if you qualify based on their criteria and their rules, then they pay those taxes. And then as the statute requires, it's paid back in certain circumstances. But counties collect property taxes, and they can take those funds and put it in this account. Always keep in mind that the state of Wyoming does not receive any property tax dollars. So when the legislature appropriates money for this program, similar to when they're appropriating money for the property tax refund program, we're not recipients in the state general fund of property tax dollars. But that being said, we will certainly administer whatever programs this legislature deems appropriate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So for you, it would be completely building out the structure, even how to deal with the liens. So whether you are going to, put those liens back into the normal county tax lien collection process, you'd have to go through and build out that entire structure. You have nothing to cover that currently. Is that accurate to say? So that entire process would have to be built out and then administered at the state level. Is that accurate?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Locke, so the lien structure for the property tax deferral is not even currently today in any way attached to the lien that you think of when property owners don't pay their property taxes and it goes to tax sale. That's an entirely different process. So this is more geared towards a lien on the property, just as if we had a mortgage. just if we're a lending institution, that is what we become, is that lending institution that provides this money for the payment of those taxes. We would send a check to the county in which the taxes are due for that half amount. And then we would file a lien. And whenever the property were to sell, when you get your title insurance, it would just show that the state of Wyoming is a lien holder, and that needs to be satisfied at any closing. But you're absolutely right. That is a process that we do not have in place in any way, shape, or form.
Okay, we're gonna, thank you, Director, and stay close. Okay, Ms. Harpsey.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Ashley Harpstree, Wyoming Taxpayers Association. In the essence of time, I'm just going to let you know we stand in strong support of this. This is another tool in your toolbox for immediate relief that's targeted, it's equitable for those in the criteria, it's stable as it protects a reliable revenue stream, and it is transparent as they figure out how to expand this current program. Thank you.
Okay, any questions, Ms. Harpsey? Okay, thank you for your testimony. Okay, Mr. Reeman.
Good morning, members of the committee. Jeremiah Reeman here on behalf of the County Commissioners Association. Just a couple of things. We do support this bill. We also support this concept. It is an important tool at the local level. Certainly appreciate Representative Lawley for reaching out to me on this concept and trying to perfect it, and continue to look forward to working with her on it. I wanted to just talk to the county option. Only county that currently is offering this program is Teton County, as has been mentioned. And I thought I might just offer a little bit of the experience that was shared to me from the staff up there, including Teton County Assessor Mel Schinkel. A few things. One, she said in her 5 years at the county, they've only had 2 applicants for this program. She said in most instances, they give out a lot of applications, but they never see those returned. And it's for a variety of reasons. In some cases, a family member just decides they're going to pay for mom and dad's, somebody else's bill, so that there's no lien. And she said that that's the biggest issue, is people don't want to have these liens on their property. She also suggested one thing, that if you have a mortgage, it's almost impossible to approach this sort of a program for a variety of reasons. One, it requires your mortgage company to sign off on this particular thing. And as you all know, you're already escrowing those funds, so it's going to be paid. Second, anytime a governmental lien comes in place, that becomes the first lien on the property. So the government is going to get its money first before the companies, and of course, they're not going to want to sign off on that. So she shared those sorts of experiences. And for those counties that aren't offering this, it's really because they don't have people asking for this sort of program. Because of course, for some of our rural counties, the tax bill may be only $1,000, and people don't want to put a lien for that sort of an amount on their property. Whereas in Teton County, of course, the bills can be considerably higher. So with that, I just wanted to make sure that I shared that experience that they shared with me. Stand for any questions.
Yeah, very good. Any questions? Representative Strzok.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My one question, is this already in place in the counties?
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Strzok, it is available to counties to implement, but as I believe has been indicated, the counties have to develop rules and regulations. Those rules and regulations then have to be sent to the department for them to approve before a program can be implemented. And currently, we only have Teton County that's offering it.
Okay, you know, I've heard from people on this issue, and I had one person in Casper that I know really well call and said, there ought to be something for somebody who's 65 and lived in their house for 30 years. And this would be the one, probably, you know, with the mortgage paid off, really. Just take away from your kids' inheritance.
Right. Mr. Chairman, I would say this is one of those options. There are other options. I don't have the information immediately in front of me, but you do have a senior citizen refund program that is not currently funded, that's on the books, that you could certainly, take forward, similar to the bill that you just considered.
Other questions, Mr. Reaman? Okay, appreciate you being here. Anybody, any other public testimony on this bill? Anybody here in the audience? Anybody on the Zoom world? None? Okay, very good. Okay, any other? Okay, we're gonna close public comment. Members, what's your pleasure on House Bill 121? Been moved by Representative Oakley, seconded by Representative Northrup. Okay, members, let's start flipping through this bill and work this little bill. Okay, pages 1, 2, and 3 basically are moving this to the state. You can see those scratch outs of the existing statute as the movement. Keeps everything on page 4. Be well in statute. Page 5. You can see the rate that's charged. Okay, any amendments? Page 5, page 6. Okay, page 7. Okay. Any amendments on page 7 on the poverty level? Okay. Flipping over to page 8. Any of these pathways? Was there an amendment on page 9? Go ahead, Representative Northrup.
Okay. Get my mic on. There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 9, I'd like to add into that verbiage from lines 1 to 4 that it's an honorably discharged veteran wherever it's suitable.
This applicant, the applicant is an honorably discharged, comma, disabled veteran.
Correct.
I think it
Correct.
reads
That's
right.
what my thoughts were, but
Okay, so
Thank
be
you.
right there on line 1. Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Representative Oakley. Okay, any discussion on the motion, on the amendment? Okay, all those in favor of the discussion?
Aye.
No.
Aye's fine.
Okay,
Aye's
hold on.
fine.
Hold on, no discussion, I see. There was a little bit of, okay.
I don't think you can get a disability certified by the VA without being honorably discharged
Right,
already.
probably,
But it sounds nice.
Yeah, we do that a lot, so that's good. Okay, so all those in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that's been adopted. Are there any other amendments to this bill? Okay, no amendments. Okay, Ms. Jeffrey, I think we're ready. Question being called on House Bill 121. Please call the roll.
Representative Bear,
Aye.
Representative Byron,
Aye.
Representative Locke,
Aye.
Representative Northrup,
Aye.
Representative Oakley,
Aye.
Representative Storer,
Aye.
Representative Strzok,
Aye.
Representative Zwanitzer,
Aye.
Chairman Harshman.
Aye. Okay. Very good. Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you all for joining us today. Appreciate everybody's good work.